What's going on, YouTube? So right now I'm out here on Sunset Boulevard in the middle of the Palisades, right? Over to the right you've got the fire department, and coming up ahead is going to be Carey Street. So I thought it would be a good time. I haven't done it in a while. I haven't done a showcase of Sunset Boulevard in about a month, something like that, I'm not sure, to show you guys if there's any progress being made on Sunset Boulevard. And there is. A lot of lots are getting cleaned up, and I would say the most cleaned up area that I've seen so far is alongside the coast. So for whatever reason, it looks to me like the city is allocating a lot of resources to the coastline and cleaning up the mess along the ocean. You know, as you can see to the right, I mean, all of these commercial and industrial buildings are still nowhere near where they need to be. And we're, nearly 4 months into this, or whatever it is. I don't know exactly, but... So anyways, I thought that this would be a good opportunity to showcase Sunset Boulevard, and now we're on Monumentum Street, and coming up ahead of us is going to be Antioch Street. These little stores right here to the right, they got like a little Grosh Erewhon, and they have a Lululemon, and this place used to be really cool to come here early in the mornings on Sunday. Every once in a while I would drive through Topanga Canyon, and I would come up here to, I think it's right here on this street, I think, if I remember correctly, right here, Swarthmore. It's in this general area. They used to have a farmer's market, and they would have like fresh fruit and like freshly made organic cookies and stuff. It was great. Cookies and croissants, and I'm kind of a little fat boy, and I love eating that. I love eating sweets and cookies and cakes. I love that stuff. All right, so anyways, we're on Via de la Paz and Sunset. It's kind of a gloomy day today. It's nice and cool, but it's pretty gloomy. So we're coming up here on Temescal Canyon, and they're still utilizing Temescal as a place to, I don't know, like recycle concrete and rebar and stuff like that. And then over to my left is the Palisades High School. Looks like the majority of it was spared. There's a couple buildings on the back end that got lit up, though, pretty bad. But I mean, at this point, they should just tear down the whole school and just build another one. There's a high school in Malibu off of I want to say Morning View Road. They just built they're building a brand new beautiful high school in Malibu. I mean, kind of makes you wonder. You know, the other day I posted a YouTube short highlighting the fact that the city is, you know, experiencing a $1 billion deficit for 2025. In other words, they're going to spend $1 billion more than what they collect in tax revenue. And it in the YouTube short, it lists all of the reasons why. Basically, you know, and in that list, there wasn't any money being allocated to the rebuilding of these cities like Altadena, Pasadena, or Pacific Palisades, Malibu. So that $1 billion deficit is probably, in all honesty, it's probably a low number. It's probably going to be higher than $1 billion deficit. So I think that the city is going to be forced into probably borrowing a lot more money to rebuild these communities, because there is so much, you know, stuff that needs to be rebuilt. You know, they need schools, they need infrastructure, telephone poles, they need, you know, the water and power, the sewage. There's so many things that need to get rebuilt. It's not just houses, you know. Although there are, you know, thousands upon thousands of houses that need to get cleaned up. And that's going to be the easy part, in my opinion. You know, I've seen this before in Ventura and in the Woolsey fire as well. The Thomas fire, the Woolsey fire. The easy part is cleaning up all this stuff. You know, you just go in there with a tractor, an excavator, and a bulldozer, and you just start knocking stuff down, picking it up with an excavator, and throw it in the back of a truck, and the truck drives off. Like, that's not very hard to do. The hard part is going to be rebuilding. That is going to be where the real challenge is. You know, and for some of these people, they simply won't have enough money to rebuild. You know, first of all, because the building costs are going to be through the roof, right? Just because right now everything's, you know, really expensive, and if these tariffs actually get implemented, and some of these goods go up by hundreds of percent, anywhere from 10% to, you know, a couple of 100% increases on lumber, rebar, steel, all of these building materials. I mean, the cost to rebuild in the Palisades is going to be ridiculously high. It was already high, but it's probably going to double if, in fact, you know, these tariffs do get implemented. On top of the fact that the demand for contractors and construction workers is also going to go through the roof as well, which will also, you know, demand a premium. So, and some of these people, residents, will, you know, they're going to get wiped out if they haven't already been. You know, all of the equity, or the majority of the equity, I would say, is lost. There's going to be billions of dollars worth of equity that just went up in smoke. You know, if you bought a house in 2020 in the Palisades for $5 million, and over the last, you know, from 2020 to 2025, the house went from 5 million to 10 million or more. I mean, what happens to all that money? You know, it's basically just gone. It's a wash. You know, the insurance company's either gonna give you the money to rebuild a house at whatever dollar amount they want to give you, or they're gonna just pay off the mortgage, you're gonna sell the land and move on with your life, which I would say a lot of people are gonna do. I don't know exactly how many, but that's anyone's guess, really. So, with all of that being said, it's going to be very interesting. And we're already hearing that land in the Palisades is selling between 10 to 30% less than what it was pre-fire, which isn't good for homeowners. It could be great for a potential investor, right? Some kids are watering at the mouth for an opportunity like this. You know, they really want home prices or land value to go down in the Palisades, because in 30 years from now, it's going to be worth, you know, 10 times what it is today. You know, maybe. I mean, who really knows? I mean, who knows? But historically speaking, yeah, in 30 years from now, it's probably going to be worth more. You know, for some people, it'll be the worst thing that ever happened to them. For others, it'll be the best thing that ever happened to them. It's really the opportunity of a lifetime. Even with, like, you know, for example, the stock market. Like, one of my dreams and fantasies in life is buying, right now I'm sitting on a significant amount of money to me, and I'm just waiting for an opportune time to deploy it into the market, into the S&P or whatever I want, right? In particular stocks. I got a 401k, and every, paycheck, monthly, money or bi-weekly, I should say, money goes into that retirement fund. But, and it's gone up over the years, but it's not the dream. Like, that's just every paycheck, a percentage of your paycheck goes into the, retirement fund. Like, okay, that's not a big deal. I'm really looking for an opportunity where the market goes down by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%, and you can allocate tens of thousands of dollars into the market and buy the dream. Like, that's the real dream. The other day I was reading an article about this kid in Switzerland who bought the certain stocks in the S&P back in 2011, and he's at over 1,000% return right now. Like, you can imagine if you deployed 10 grand back in 2011 in certain stocks of the S&P and you're over 1,000% return, like, you go from truck driver, loser to multi-millionaire. It takes time, but man, that's a major dream and fantasy of mine. So this is one of the reasons why I talk about these really boring things like the stock market, the real estate market, interest rates, the business cycle, and the bankruptcy rate and stuff like that, because I'm trying to inform myself as much as possible, and try to guide my way through over the long term to financial success, right? Financial freedom. I love listening to so many different types of people, from Tom Lee to Dave Ramsey, it doesn't matter. I like to hear all different types of perspectives. And I know that there's nothing more, stimulating for, not only that, but it's just, I know that women, there's nothing more that they desire than a nice, big, juicy conversation about interest rates and, macroeconomics. I know that. So I like to talk about that stuff, So stupid. I don't think there's anything more seductive, than a conversation about economics, really. That's what I would want. So anyways, I'm coming up here on my next job site. I'm just teasing and being silly. I'm having fun. But that is a major fantasy and dream of mine, is to get into the market at a more optimal time. Obviously, if you're a 60-year-old person who's or 65 or 70, and you're looking to cash in on your retirement plan or your your pension fund, it doesn't matter, whatever. The last thing you would want to see is the stock market go down by that amount, and I understand that. So, but I'd say we've had a pretty strong bull run. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and pause this conversation for the time being. I got to drop some stuff off right here. Give me about 20 minutes and I'll be back at it. All right, guys? Just 1 sec. Sorry about that. I had to go to a job site and drop off a bunch of stuff. And then I actually came across an old friend, somebody who I had worked with and I hadn't seen in such a long time. So I was talking with him for a little. His name was Gilfredo. And we used to call him Willie. And that man can work, I will say. Gilfredo's probably one of the hardest working guys I've ever met in my life. 5 foot nothing, but man, I look up to that guy like he's 10 foot tall, just because of his work ethic. So, anyways. So back to talking about, I don't know, I guess I forget what I was talking about. one of my dreams more recently, probably, I'm 35 years old now. I probably started to fantasize and dream about investing money into the stock market and having it, have a massive return. Probably when I was in my late 20s, maybe like 27, 28, something like that. That's when I really started to go down this rabbit hole of stocks and bonds and investments and real estate and interest rates and all of these things, the unemployment rate. It's just, for whatever reason, it's so intriguing to me. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that we're in a bubble in the stock market, the housing market? Or do you think that this is all normal? It's all good. We're starting to see, the stock market take a pretty significant hit. I mean, maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, or 3 weeks, whatever it was, I don't know. It was at 45,000, and now it's under, I think it's getting ready to go below 39. Break into the 38,000s, the Dow anyways. And I think all of that is just in anticipation for this whole tariff situation. Nobody really knows what's going to happen with tariffs, So it'll be very interesting to see how this all unfolds. Is Donald Trump really going to impose these 100% or 200% tariffs on China? Like, 80% of the goods that are sold on Walmart.com and Amazon.com, like 80% or more of these products are imported from China. Is the price of all of these goods going to more than double? So I think that's causing a lot of volatility and uncertainty within the markets, right? Nobody really knows what's going to happen until it actually happens. Or is he just throwing out these big numbers in an attempt to scare people and gain some leverage? I don't know. I guess we'll see. And the other thing that we're hearing about is Doge. It's kind of dropped off a little bit lately, but Doge, and we're talking about doing thousands of layoffs to these government employees, right? And it kind of makes you wonder, is Donald Trump attempting to force the federal government into cutting interest rates by increasing the unemployment rate? It makes you wonder. Donald Trump has said that he wants interest rates to get cut. He wants lower interest rates, right? So people can buy houses again, and people will buy cars again, and whatever, right? But he can't directly dictate whether or not interest rates go up or down. But what he can do is he can kind of crash the stock market, right? By threatening tariffs. And we're already starting to see a pretty significant dip in the stock market, right? And that, is the federal government getting ready to cut interest rates because the stock market's tipping down? And if Donald Trump, fires thousands of people from the government and the unemployment rate goes up as a result, will he be forcing the hand of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates? Is that what this is all about? I don't know. It's all speculation. Nobody really knows, but... Or is this just a goodwill attempt to try and reshore manufacturing in the States? Which I'm for. I think we should build more stuff at home. Like, we really should. We became really dependent on China for all different types of products. Like, we shouldn't be so dependent on them. And it's not just China. It's, China, Mexico, Canada, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia. Like, there's some Taiwan, like all of these places. We should really reshore, onshore manufacturing of certain goods in particular, right? So especially, medicines and pharmaceuticals and, things that we really need. We kind of got a little taste of that during COVID. But anyways, I'm just speculating, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this whole thing and figure out where things are going. The other day I was listening to James Bianco from Bianco Research, and he's got a theory on how these tariffs could potentially, well, this is at least what I got from it. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what he said, but he was talking about how these tariffs could potentially create, as odd as it sounds, a deflationary recession. And basically what he was saying was, initially what we will see is, if these tariffs do get implemented, you will see the cost of goods, for example, on Amazon and Walmart.com go up by very large amounts. If you want to buy a tennis racket and it goes from $100 to $200, I'm just, throwing out numbers, you're probably not going to be buying a tennis racket. As the price of tennis rackets and these products goes up significantly, the demand for them will go down significantly. And over a period of time, what will happen is these companies will be forced to start cutting prices. Even if they have to take a loss on these products, they got to get rid of this inventory. So what initially we could see is inflation, right? Higher consumer prices. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is going to go up. But what that could lead to is, in time, deflation, because the demand for these goods will drop off significantly. That will force companies to start just fire selling these products, even at a loss, just to get rid of their inventory. And that might be a good thing for some people. If you're looking for deflation, you want to buy a tennis racket at a good deal in a year or two down the road, that might be a more opportune time to do it. So now, obviously this is all speculation and it hasn't materialized, but it kind of makes sense. So, but then if demand for those goods doesn't go down, and people still continue to buy tennis rackets at double the price, that's not good either. That's inflation, and the Federal Reserve, or Jerome Powell, is going to be really stuck in between a rock and a hard place. Potentially unemployment could go up higher, and which isn't good. We're at 4% now, and at the same time, inflation could go up higher too. So what do you do? If the cost of goods doubles, and the Consumer Price Index goes up as a result, inflation goes up, what do we do? The Federal Reserve's job is to get inflation under control, bring it down to 2%. If these tariffs get implemented, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Consumer prices are not going down if these tariffs genuinely get implemented. Consumer prices will be going up. And that could, force the hand of the Federal Reserve, whether we believe it or not, to potentially raise interest rates to reduce demand for these goods by even more. So we're in a very odd situation, I would say. I don't think we've seen anything like this. There's so many things that have happened over the last 5 years, between printing trillions of dollars, lowering interest rates, pandemics, wars, potential for recessions, man. And then we have these polar swings between our political, our politicians. Will go from Democrats to Republicans, and it's just, man, there's so many things going on in the world today. It's very hard to guide your way through this never-ending debacle, it seems like. And now we have natural disasters, wildfires, insurance problems. It's crazy. A very unique time. Very unique time. What do you guys think? Where do you think we're headed? You think we're going up? We're going down? In the short term, the near term, the long term? Where are we going? Are we going to the moon? Or are we going down in a hole? I guess only time will tell. So, all right, well, that's just my little daily spiel for today. It's sharing with you guys some of my thoughts on this whole world and this whole, thing going on. And I'm probably getting pretty close to that 20-minute mark. So I think this will be a good time to close it out. So before I do that, I'd like to say thank you again to everyone who's been checking out the channel, all of the comments and the likes and the subscribers. And, I do my best to try and take videos and film content as much as I can and provide good quality content, I suppose. I don't know. So anyways, thank you again to all of the people who have been checking out the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm getting really close to 1,000 subs. I'm just over 900 subscribers now, which is actually really cool. I never thought in a million years that would be a thing. I would have been happy with 9 subscribers. Now I'm getting close to 1,000. And that's going to be a major milestone for any channel. It's actually a really hard thing to do, believe it or not. And most of it, in all honesty, is going to be attributed to these fires, as sad as it is to say. But it's just something that's going on in my life, and I thought that I would be able to utilize the opportunity, considering my profession, to film and document the whole process and everything like that. So, yeah. So thank you again to close it out. Thanks, guys. Until next time, all right? I'll talk to you later.